For much of the 20th and early 21st centuries, scientific and public understanding of Otodus Megalodon rested on a limited fossil record. The species, which went extinct approximately 3.6 million years ago, is known primarily from its teeth and from a small number of vertebral elements. Cartilaginous skeletons, which make up the bulk of a shark's body, do not fossilize well. As a result, reconstructions of Megalodon anatomy were necessarily inferential, relying on comparisons with living sharks and on scaling relationships derived from partial remains. For decades, the dominant reconstruction depicted Megalodon as a greatly enlarged version of the modern great white shark, Carcharodon carcharias. This interpretation was intuitive. Great whites occupy a similar ecological role as large macropredatory sharks, possess broadly comparable tooth morphology, and are among the largest predatory sharks alive today. Scaling the great white body plan upward appeared at first glance to offer a reasonable approximation. However, this approach carried significant limitations. Teeth alone provide information about feeding mechanics and prey type, but they offer little direct insight into overall body proportions. Vertebrae can suggest relative size and growth patterns, but without an articulated skeleton, estimates of total length, mass, and shape remain model-dependent. Early reconstructions were therefore not direct observations, but hypotheses constrained by limited data. In recent years, a series of studies has revisited these assumptions using expanded comparative datasets and more rigorous biomechanical modeling. In 2024 and 2025, a collaboration involving 29 researchers specializing in fossil sharks and vertebrate biomechanics published analyses that reassessed Megalodon's size, mass, and body proportions. These studies did not merely refine earlier estimates, they challenged the foundational assumption that Megalodon closely resembled a scaled-up great white. One of the most widely cited results from this recent work concerns estimated total length. Earlier studies commonly placed Megalodon's maximum length in the range of 18 to 20 meters, approximately 59 to 65 feet. These estimates were derived by correlating tooth size with body length in modern sharks, particularly great whites, and then extrapolating. The newer analyses applied revised scaling models based on a broader sample of living and extinct shark species. When these models were applied to the largest known Megalodon teeth and to associated vertebral material, the upper bound of estimated total length increased. Some models suggest that exceptionally large individuals may have reached approximately 24.3 meters or roughly 80 feet. It is important to emphasize that this figure represents an estimate rather than a definitive measurement. The fossil record does not preserve complete individuals, and the largest size estimates correspond to rare, extreme specimens rather than average adults. Nonetheless, the implication is that previous reconstructions may have underestimated maximum length by several meters. Mass estimates have been revised upward accordingly. Based on volumetric modeling that incorporates revised body proportions, some studies estimate body masses approaching 90 to 95 metric tons for the largest individuals. These values place Megalodon among the heaviest predatory animals known to have existed. As with length, these figures are model-derived and subject to uncertainty, but they provide a useful framework for understanding the energetic and biomechanical constraints faced by such an animal. While size revisions attracted public attention, the more consequential finding concerned body shape. The assumption that Megalodon closely resembled a great white shark in overall proportions had rarely been questioned in popular reconstructions. However, when researchers compared vertebral proportions across a large sample of modern sharks, inconsistencies emerged. In the 2024 to 2025 analyses, researchers examined vertebral columns from 145 living shark species and 20 extinct taxa. Particular attention was given to the relative proportions of the head region, trunk, and tail. One key specimen, a partial vertebral column from Belgium, measuring approximately 11 meters in length, was analyzed in conjunction with additional vertebral material from Denmark and other localities. When these fossil vertebrae were scaled using great white proportions, the resulting body plans produced biomechanical inconsistencies. Specifically, the trunk region appeared disproportionately long, and the inferred musculature did not align with what would be expected in a stocky great white-like form. When alternative scaling models were applied, a different pattern emerged. The revised reconstructions suggest that Megalodon possessed a more elongated, slender body than previously assumed. In these models, the head accounted for approximately 16.6% of total body length, while the tail represented roughly 32.6%. The intervening trunk region was proportionally longer and narrower than in great whites. In overall silhouette, the animal more closely resembled large, slender-bodied sharks, such as lemon sharks, Negaprion species, than the robust form of Carcharodon. This finding has significant implications. Body shape influences hydrodynamics, swimming efficiency, and energetic cost. In water, drag increases rapidly with cross-sectional area. A bulky body plan that functions well at moderate sizes can become inefficient when scaled to extreme lengths. Modern examples illustrate this constraint. Whale sharks and basking sharks, the largest living sharks, possess relatively slender, streamlined bodies. Similarly, the largest whales exhibit elongated, hydrodynamically optimized forms rather than compact, bulky shapes. If Megalodon had retained a great white-like build at lengths approaching 24 meters, drag forces would have increased dramatically. Sustained swimming would have required disproportionate energy expenditure, potentially exceeding feasible metabolic limits. A more elongated body plan reduces drag and distributes mass more efficiently, allowing large animals to move through water with lower energetic cost. Revised body proportions also inform interpretations of Megalodon's swimming behavior. Popular portrayals often depict Megalodon as a fast, constantly active pursuit predator. However, locomotion modeling suggests a different strategy. Based on muscle distribution, tail proportions, and comparisons with large extant sharks, researchers estimate that Megalodon's cruising speed was relatively low, on the order of 2.1 to 3.5 kilometers per hour, approximately 1.3 to 2.2 miles per hour. This range is comparable to the cruising speeds of modern great white sharks and many other large marine vertebrates. Low cruising speed does not imply sluggishness during attacks. Many large predatory sharks employ ambush strategies, minimizing energy expenditure while patrolling and relying on rapid bursts of acceleration during strikes. In Megalodon's case, a large elongated tail accounting for roughly 1/3 of body length would have provided substantial propulsive force during acceleration. At extreme body mass, momentum itself becomes a significant factor. A rapid acceleration by a multi-tens of tons animal would have generated forces capable of stunning or destabilizing prey even before contact. Revised reconstructions therefore support an ambush-based predation model scaled to unprecedented size rather than continuous high-speed pursuit. The revised understanding of Megalodon's size and shape also reframes interpretations of its feeding mechanics. Jaw reconstructions based on updated proportions suggest a gape measuring approximately 2.7 meters in height and 3.4 meters in width for the largest individuals. These dimensions are derived from scaling relationships between tooth size, jaw cartilage, and head length observed in modern sharks. adjusted for the revised head-to-body ratio. Bite force estimates vary depending on modeling assumptions, but published ranges typically fall between approximately 108,000 and 182,000 newtons. These values exceed those of modern great white sharks by an order of magnitude and place Megalodon among the most powerful biters known. As with all such estimates, they represent modeled ranges rather than direct measurements. Tooth morphology provides additional context. Megalodon teeth are robust, triangular, and heavily serrated, with the largest known specimens approaching 18 centimeters in total length. Teeth of this size, combined with high bite forces, are well suited for penetrating dense tissue and bone. Fossilized whale bones bearing Megalodon bite marks provide direct evidence of feeding behavior. In several cases, tooth impressions occur on ribs, vertebrae, and flipper bones rather than exclusively on softer regions. This pattern suggests a feeding strategy focused on rapid incapacitation through skeletal damage rather than prolonged pursuit or repeated shallow bites. Taken together, the revised estimates of size, mass, and body shape indicate that earlier reconstructions of Megalodon were constrained by limited data and by analogies that do not scale linearly. The assumption that a great white body plan could simply be enlarged overlooked fundamental hydrodynamic and energetic constraints. The newer models do not depict Megalodon as an exaggerated version of a familiar shark, but as a distinct form shaped by the demands of extreme size. While uncertainties remain, the convergence of vertebral analysis, hydrodynamic modeling, and comparative anatomy supports the view that Megalodon represented a unique evolutionary solution rather than a scaled copy of any living species. These findings also set the stage for re-evaluating other aspects of Megalodon biology, including metabolism, diet, and extinction dynamics. Size and shape are not merely descriptive traits, they influence energy requirements, prey selection, and vulnerability to environmental change. Understanding these factors is essential for interpreting how a predator of such scale could dominate ancient oceans and why it ultimately disappeared. Understanding the size and body shape of Otodus megalodon provides only part of the picture. To fully interpret how this animal functioned as an apex predator and why it ultimately went extinct, it is necessary to examine its metabolism, feeding ecology, and the environmental pressures that shaped its evolutionary trajectory. Recent research has reframed these aspects of megalodon biology, replacing earlier assumptions with more complex and, in some cases, counterintuitive interpretations. For much of the 20th century, sharks were assumed to be strictly ectothermic animals. Their body temperature was thought to closely match that of the surrounding water, with metabolic rates largely dictated by ambient conditions. This assumption held true for most shark species and influenced interpretations of Megalodon's physiology. However, studies of living sharks over the past several decades have demonstrated that this view is incomplete. Some large predatory sharks, including great whites, Carcharodon carcharias, makos, Isura species, and porbeagles, Lamna narsus, exhibit regional endothermy. These species maintain elevated temperatures in specific body regions, such as the swimming muscles, brain, and eyes, through specialized vascular structures that conserve metabolic heat. Recent isotopic analyses of megalodon tooth enamel suggest that this extinct species may have exhibited a more extensive form of endothermy. By comparing oxygen isotope ratios in megalodon teeth with those of coexisting ectothermic sharks and marine mammals, researchers inferred that megalodon maintained a body temperature consistently warmer than the surrounding seawater. Some models estimate an average body temperature of approximately 27 degrees Celsius, around 80.6 degrees Fahrenheit, several degrees above ambient conditions. It is important to note that this interpretation is model-based. Tooth enamel does not directly record body temperature, but isotopic signatures can reflect thermoregulatory patterns when analyzed in ecological context. While uncertainties remain, the prevailing interpretation is that Megalodon possessed a level of whole body temperature regulation exceeding that of most modern sharks and approaching that of marine mammals. This metabolic profile would have conferred advantages. Elevated body temperature improves muscle performance, neural processing speed, and sensory acuity. In predatory contexts, these traits enhance reaction time, strike precision, and endurance. For an ambush predator of enormous size, such advantages would have been significant. However, thermoregulation also imposes substantial energetic costs. Maintaining an elevated body temperature requires continuous metabolic input. Even at rest, endothermic animals consume energy to offset heat loss. In large-bodied marine animals, this requirement scales with both mass and surface area, though not linearly. Based on volumetric mass estimates and inferred metabolic rates, some studies estimate that large adult megalodons required on the order of 100,000 kilocalories per day to sustain basic physiological functions. This figure should be understood as an approximate model rather than a precise measurement, but it provides a useful reference point for understanding the scale of energy intake required. For comparison, an average adult human requires approximately 2,000 to 2,500 kilocalories per day. Large marine mammals, such as blue whales, consume millions of kilocalories daily, but they do so by filtering vast quantities of low-energy prey. Megalodon, by contrast, relied on active predation, requiring frequent intake of high-energy prey items. Such energetic demands imply that Megalodon could not afford prolonged periods without feeding. Sustained hunting success was essential not merely for growth or reproduction, but for basic survival. Earlier interpretations of Megalodon ecology emphasized specialization on large whales. This view was supported by the frequent discovery of Megalodon bite marks on fossilized whale bones and by the intuitive assumption that a predator of such size would focus on the largest available prey. Recent isotopic analyses challenge this assumption. Carbon and nitrogen isotope ratios preserved in Megalodon tooth enamel indicate a broad dietary range spanning multiple trophic levels. Rather than exhibiting the narrow isotopic signature expected of a specialist predator, Megalodon appears to have fed opportunistically across the marine food web. This interpretation suggests that Megalodon consumed a wide variety of prey, including large and small marine mammals, sizable fish, and other sharks. Dietary flexibility would have been advantageous in fluctuating environments, allowing the predator to exploit available resources rather than relying exclusively on a single prey type. Fossil evidence supports this view. Megalodon teeth and bite marks have been found in association with remains of dolphins, pinnipeds, medium-sized baleen whales, and even other large sharks. This pattern indicates a generalist apex predator capable of adapting its hunting strategy to different prey sizes and types. At the same time, fossilized whale bones bearing distinctive bite marks provide insight into hunting behavior. In many cases, damage is concentrated on skeletal elements critical for locomotion, such as flippers and tail vertebrae. This pattern suggests a strategy aimed at rapid immobilization rather than prolonged pursuit. By disabling a whale's ability to swim effectively, Megalodon could reduce the risk of injury and energy expenditure during feeding. The robust, serrated teeth of Megalodon were well suited for this approach. Their thickness and edge morphology allowed them to penetrate dense bone without catastrophic failure, even under extreme bite forces. Instances where tooth fragments are found embedded in fossil bone indicate that feeding interactions were forceful enough to break teeth, which were then replaced through continuous tooth regeneration. Megalodon thrived during the Miocene epoch, approximately 23 to 5 million years ago, a period characterized by warm global temperatures and high marine productivity. Extensive shallow continental shelves supported abundant populations of marine mammals, including early baleen whales that occupied a range of body sizes. These conditions created an environment capable of sustaining a predator with high energetic requirements. Warm waters reduced thermoregulatory costs, while abundant prey provided reliable caloric intake. Megalodon's global distribution during this period reflects these favorable conditions. However, the transition from the Miocene to the Pliocene marked the beginning of significant environmental change. Global temperatures gradually declined and polar ice sheets expanded. Sea levels fluctuated, altering the extent of shallow marine habitats. While these changes were not abrupt, their cumulative effects reshaped marine ecosystems. One consequence was the reduction of shallow coastal nursery habitats. Many marine mammals and sharks rely on such environments for breeding and juvenile development. As these habitats diminished, population structures and distribution patterns changed. During the late Miocene and early Pliocene, new large predatory sharks emerged, including early forms of the modern great white shark. Although smaller than adult megalodons, great whites occupied overlapping ecological niches, particularly with juvenile megalodons. Evidence suggests that megalodon pups were born at substantial sizes, potentially exceeding 3.5 meters in length. Despite their size, juveniles would have been less experienced hunters and more vulnerable to competition. Great whites, which matured earlier and required fewer calories, may have outcompeted juvenile megalodons for shared prey resources. This competitive pressure would have disproportionately affected recruitment, the survival of young individuals into adulthood. Even modest reductions in juvenile survival can destabilize populations of large, slow-reproducing predators. The fossil record indicates that Megalodon disappeared approximately 3.6 million years ago. Rather than showing signs of a sudden collapse, the record suggests a gradual decline. Geographic distribution contracted over time, and the frequency of fossil remains decreased. Multiple factors likely contributed to this decline. Cooling ocean temperatures increased thermoregulatory costs for an endothermic predator. Sea level changes reduced prey availability and nursery habitats. Competition from emerging predators further constrained food resources. Critically, Megalodon's high metabolic demands limited its capacity to adapt. An organism requiring tens of thousands of kilocalories daily has little margin for error. Declines in prey density or hunting success would have immediate consequences. In contrast, smaller, ectothermic predators could survive on lower energy budgets and adapt to new ecological niches. As marine ecosystems reorganized, these species persisted, while Megalodon's specialized combination of size, metabolism, and predatory strategy became increasingly unsustainable. Following Megalodon's extinction, marine ecosystems adjusted. Other apex predators expanded their roles. Great white sharks increased their geographic range. Orcas evolved into highly specialized marine mammal predators. Sperm whales continued exploiting deep-water prey resources. No single species replaced Megalodon's ecological role directly. Instead, its absence allowed for a redistribution of predatory pressure across multiple taxa. This pattern underscores the complexity of apex predator dynamics and the cascading effects of extinction events. Megalodon's extinction does not reflect failure in a simplistic sense. For approximately 20 million years, the species dominated marine ecosystems. Its adaptations were highly effective under the conditions in which it evolved. However, those same adaptations impose constraints. Large body size, elevated metabolism, and reliance on abundant high-energy prey created vulnerability to gradual environmental change. When conditions shifted beyond a critical threshold, the species lacked the flexibility to adapt. Modern reconstructions of Megalodon reflect this balance. Rather than portraying it as an exaggerated version of a living shark, current research depicts a distinct evolutionary experiment, an apex predator optimized for a specific ecological context. Understanding Megalodon in this way reframes its extinction not as a mystery, but as a case study in the limits of biological scaling. Extreme size confers power, but it also amplifies dependence on stable environmental conditions.